Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology. Occasionally I do art and occasionally I do spiritual adventure, but today I'm talking about astrology because I love astrology more than any other subject in the world. I think it's the most fascinating code that we humans have to which to live and operate our lives under. Before we get my guest on, I'll remind you about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. And there you'll find a couple paragraphs of mundane astrology, and then I get into the sun signs from there. I encourage you to read your sun sign and your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, get your birth certificate and give me a call, and I'll tell you it. Or contact your mother; she knows what your time of birth was because she was there. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the Lunar Gospel, and my guest is Cal Garrison. She is the author of the Lunar Gospel. It's a complete guide to your astrological moon, and she's joining me today from her faraway land of Arizona, and we're going to be talking about the Lunar Gospel. So welcome to the show today, Cal. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, hi. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. It's great. So I have moon in Cancer, so I understand the moon very well. And and so I think of it as one of my more powerful placements in my chart. I think it emphasizes and epitomizes who I am as an individual. And I think it's ironic, or not, I should say, that my role in my life, in my role of my own children, has forced my moon to be my predominant player because my children lost their mother about 18 years ago. So my Cancer moon came in very handy raising those children, having a strong maternal quality as a male. I still was able to do that, and I think it helped me through it all because I had empathy and sympathy. And I love the fact that you're talking about the Lunar Gospel as your complete guide, because how do you feel about, you think of the moon as more important than the sun in your sort of your premise?
Yeah, no, I think basically when you're looking at the moon, you're looking at whatever the soul has contracted to bring in, and all the huge body of experience that they've brought in from every single previous life is based on the lunar archetype. Mm-hmm. All right, so essentially anybody with a Cancer moon, and of course everything is relative to whatever the aspects might be, but typically a person with a Cancer moon has already got their PhD in home and family and being a householder. So the reason you got thrown into that position is because you probably knew more about taking care of people, your own and other people's, because ultimately the Cancer archetype isn't just about your biological family. It's not just about you being a householder and a parent. Mm-hmm. It's not just about your own kids. But Cancer archetype is, at the highest spiritual frequency, is the hallmark of somebody who understands what it means to be connected to the tribe. Okay, and that whole concept of we are all one family, okay, is something that anybody with a Cancer moon probably understands better than anybody else.
Yeah, it's that strong maternal link that grounds everybody, and it is very much, I live in a very much of a tribal community. I live with a very large extended family, and this is the place everybody comes to, which is natural.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it really, it's spot on, because my house is the house that's full of people every weekend. All the kids come over, the grandchildren come over, and, it's just, this is where the home is. Home is where the heart is. And I think it also is, it speaks to, what I like about this is that I think of the sun as external and the moon as internal. Mm-hmm. And I think the moon, even though we have our sun signs and we express them outwardly as we do through our actions and deeds and our personalities, I think inwardly that is dictated by our moon, because I think the moon is more, it's soul based. It's like you mentioned earlier. It's our real soul's code, so to speak.
Yeah, it's what the soul. It's the all the. It's since the time before time. Okay, the lunar archetype is the body of wisdom that you've carried with you into this life. And as you say, like the solar energy, the only reason we don't understand how these things fit together is because we just got turned back on to astrology back in the 60s, okay? And so everybody's starting from square one without a clue. It's interesting because over time, I think I have begun to realize that, as you say, the solar thing is part of the external presentation, but what I've come to understand is that it helps to look at it as if it is solar energy. And like the solar panels that you've got on the roof of your heart, okay, this is the fuel. Right. The archetype of the sun is the fuel that the moon is using to move from the past, or to move the body of experience that you've brought in from the past to whatever the future is. And the future is held in the rising sign.
Yeah.
Because if you think about, and it's so obvious if you just think about the metaphor, the rising sign is what's rising up over the eastern horizon at the moment that you've drawn your first breath. You haven't seen that portion of your soul yet. Okay, so I'm curious, what's your ascending sign?
I'm a Virgo.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. Okay, so if you look at this, and what's your sun sign?
I'm an Aries.
Oh, far out. Now, this is so weird. I'm a Virgo with an Aries moon and Cancer rising.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, we're a perfect match.
That's so funny. That is so funny. So anyhow, the whole business of, what is it that we're about to experience in this life, or what piece of our soul are we about to develop, because life is a school, and if you've already got your PhD, you've got your PhD in Cancer. You're essentially one of the ones that we've been waiting for, because you are one of the ones that remembers what it means to be part of the tribe. Okay, we've lost that wisdom because, of course, we've been trying to murder all of the indigenous people for the last 800 years. Okay, so you carry this kernel of wisdom about that with you, right? And it's being fueled by this Aries energy, which would imply, okay, that you have been like number one at whatever it was that you were doing. Well, relative to all of it.
It's a slow process, yeah, but I think that when you take into account the characteristics that I think of as when I think of a Cancer, I think of empathy, I think of intuition, I think of all those sort of maternal qualities that are intangible in some ways. We can't put your finger on empathy. Either you have it or you don't. And I think that you sort of have to know, you can understand the suffering people go through, and as a result, you can offer solace as a result, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Also, too, you know what? You know how to take care of people.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that lately.
You know how to take care of people.
Yeah, I know. That's something that is, that's the nature of the beast. And so the Lunar Gospel is, in your view, I mean, you pay credence to the sun, obviously, you pay credence to the ascendant, but you're still latching onto the moon as the dominant signature of the person. Or you think that's a more important, more highly elevated?
It helps me. I wouldn't say it's more highly elevated, but if you're doing astrology for a living, if you zero in on the moon first, you get the bulk of whatever the person's story is, because the way the moon moves around the chart in the course of a person's lifetime and relative to its relationship to the Saturn cycles.
Right.
Okay, and the cycles of the lunar nodes, you're going to repeat that past life story for at least 40 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, but at a certain point, what they say about the moon, or my understanding of the moon, is it represents a huge body of wisdom that you can use constructively in the current incarnation. But the problem with most people is they get stuck there. Okay, and that's the danger of the moon, because it's so easy to fall back into those patterns because you know them like the back of your hand.
Well, it becomes instinctive. You're right, instinctual. And,
Yes.
yeah, but you know that's you know. But when it comes to the moon and the different signs, we see that those qualities manifest quite differently.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
You bet they do. Like I have an Aries moon.
Hmm.
I was and if you want to just focus on that, all right. Anybody with an Aries moon hasn't got the slightest idea how to take care of anybody but themselves. Okay, because they've spent every single one of their previous incarnations isolated and alone in a warrior circumstance, and possibly in a circumstance that isolated them because their job was to focus intensely on one specific thing, and they didn't have time for relationships because their primary relationship was with whatever it is that their purpose involved.
Well, it may have been their survival. It may have been self-sufficiency. I think that's very apropos rather. I could see a Aries moon being someone who is, I think they're a very generous moon. I think there's a certain generosity there, but they are more self-centered about the plights that they're facing.
Yeah, no, I grew up, basically, I didn't even, this is going to sound a little crude, but I didn't even learn how to wipe myself until I was 10. Okay, like nobody showed me how to do anything when I was growing up. I spent the first 3 years of my life isolated in a little playpen all by myself, and never developed the ability to cultivate relationships even with my sisters or my parents, because there were issues in the family that made me be the one who got subtracted from the equation, because I seemed to be perfectly fine all by myself.
That's what your moon. That's what the Aries moon projects. It projects that sense of self confidence, self-sufficiency. Yeah.
Yeah, you find something. I mean, basically, sitting in the playpen, I found something to do.
Right.
And I always, and so it's been nearly impossible for me to have relationships. I was a very good mother on the instinctive level. Like I nursed all of my kids for like 2 years apiece. Okay, but I walked out on their father when the oldest two were 5 and 2.5. I basically got on my bike and left one day. Okay, and interesting, the whole story around that. It's not as bad as it sounds, but I had no idea at the time, because I was only about 25 when I did this. I had no idea at the time what I was doing, and it took me up until, I don't know, I was about 45 or 50 years old to figure out how to care about people.
Well, that was probably driven by that impulsivity of the Aries moon. There's a certain irrationality, impulse-driven quality to the Aries moon. There's no question about it.
Yeah, you don't have to think about things; you just do them.
Just do them. Just charge on, headstrong.
Also, too, I mean, if I look at my transits during that time, my God, I had transiting Uranus sitting on my south node in Scorpio, conjunct Mars squaring Venus.
Yeah, I mean, you've got
all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly. But getting back to your book, the idea. So you're placing this sort of. I mean, why do you call it the Lunar Gospel? I guess that's a good question. Why do you call it the Gospel?
Well, because I didn't want to call it the Bible.
Okay. That's a good answer.
For me, that when you're choosing a title for a book, it's interesting. Oftentimes, the writer, and when you're working for Weithers, you don't always have a choice about the title.
Right, I understand that. No, sometimes the publisher will push a title, you'll just say, okay.
Yeah, I was with this one.
But your whole focus of the book is about the astrological moon and the role it places in the individual. And the role how it determines the personality of the person. I think more importantly, when we talk about expression and we talk about how we respond in situations, it all is driven by our emotions and how emotions either fire us up or bring us down or whatever. But ultimately, all of our actions will be tied to our emotions as opposed to something else. Even if that can become very, very primal, as you say. Even if it comes down to, what's for dinner tonight, you're going to be driven to find that there's going to be an emotional quality to that, because you could think of dinner as a sustenance and a form of family and all that. And so the moon would play sort of, like the mother robin bringing the worm back for the babies. It's that kind of thing, that kind of metaphor. So regardless of the sign of the moon, I think that the moon plays that distinctly emotional role, and that emotional role, I think, is in many ways. I'm agreeing with you that I think the moon has a much greater weight than oftentimes, maybe sometimes astrologers give it, even so much as to say it's over the sun.
Of course. Well, you think about it, okay? You sign contracts long before you're born. I mean, there's such a thing as conception charts.
Yeah, so I know, yeah.
Right. So there's at least 3 or 4 conception charts that you can do up for any person. All right. And there are, there's the third dimension is a weird place. All right, because it isn't necessarily the peak of human expression. This is basically the ass end of the universe. All right, and the soul gets sent here for very specific reasons, because there's certain types of lessons that you can only learn in the third dimension. It's a very unusual place. So prior to your birth, I mean, there's space between lifetimes, and a lot of people argue about how long that space is. If you listen to Madame Blavatsky, it's at least 600 years between each lifetime. If you listen to other people, they're talking about the fact that they remember being in Auschwitz. I'm not so sure if there's any way to cross-reference any of that until we get to the other side, but prior to every birth, you have to sit down with your higher self and with the creator or whoever's in charge, okay, and look at the body of experience that has rolled you to the point in time where you're about to go back here again. And there's certain things that have to be balanced, because ultimately this whole chain of incarnations is like a long story that's meant to get all of us back to God. All right.
And each time you come through, you have a new set of challenges.
A new set of challenges. So you're sitting down, and the moon is basically the receptacle that holds the entire contents of the past and who you have always been up until this incarnation. And the reason it's more important is because that's all you know how to do when you get here. You have no idea what this life is going to be about, because this is a free will planet. Okay, and certain things are fated, all right, but God and your higher self and all the angels that are making sure that you're going to get from birth to death and accomplish, okay, the agreements and keep the contracts that you made prior to your conception, are keeping an eye on you to make sure that you are honing your soul or carving your soul through this series of experiences that are supposedly fated, but the choices that you make at these major milestones, okay, are really what counts in terms of your personal evolution. Because if you make the wrong choice, or you choose not to wake up, or if you choose, say, at 40 to say, fuck it, I'm just going to go along with the program and fall asleep next to my illusions, by the time you get to the end of the line and have to leave this plane, you will have missed, okay, 60% of your lessons.
Right.
Okay, because you chose this other path. Mm-hmm. And the impulse in this dimension is to go down instead of up.
Right. And I think that's what the squares are all about. The squares become our ladder, our Jacob's ladder for climbing. And those squares are where the challenges come from. That's the whole thing. We climb up this ladder out of hardship. It's only out of hardship that we learn anything. We don't learn anything sitting around eating potato chips all day long. We have to get angry. We have to have hardship. And when hardship comes, we rise to the occasion or we don't. I think that's what you're referring to. Some people can rise to the occasion. Some people don't. And it's your choice to rise or not.
No, this is what's interesting too. I mean, if you look at the way, people, you can look at a chart and see, oh my God, it's nothing but squares and T-squares and grand crosses. This poor individual is going to have, certain types of issues, all kinds of stuff. Then you start to think, as time passes, what happens is the horoscope progresses. Okay, and the things that were square at birth are going to turn into sextiles or trines as time goes on. And the same goes for all the oppositions. So we learn from our experience, we learn from our mistakes. Now, the interesting thing that I find, younger astrologers, when somebody's really beginning, they'll look at a chart and they say, oh my God, you're a wonderful person. You've got all kinds of grand trines and everything looks hunky-dory for you. Okay, well, by the time that person is 30 or 40, all of those beautiful aspects are going to be squares and oppositions.
I know. And that's true. And of course, anybody born with that many trines, they tend to be pretty boring people sometimes. I mean, they're not... They are boring. They are boring, or their lives are. They have a sense of apathy, I think is what the word is. Is they don't have that.
But
They have. Yeah. They're apathetic. They don't have a sense of. There's no spark. There's no any drive. There's no drive. Exactly.
They never develop a set of balls.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, and the thing too with that is, I mean, think about it. If you don't learn, how to work with adversity or consider the uses of adversity when you're a young person,
right?
It's very hard to develop that when you get older.
Oh, I know. And that is something that you learn over time and through experience. You have to learn it over time and through experience. So if you don't have that, you're up a creek. And so the idea of not having those difficulties. So the difficulties do manifest. They are sort of, I think that's just our lessons. We're born with a set of assets. We're born with a set of liabilities. The liabilities are the squares, obviously. And that's what we have to learn from. We have got to move through that. Did you freeze there? It looks like your screen is frozen. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about two minutes as I get my connection back to her, and we'll pick up where we left off. What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com. Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Hi, your host, Chris Flisher here. I've been producer and host of this podcast and radio show for the past 10 years. My goal has always been to provide enlightening, progressive, and logical discussions about where we are as a species and how we move ourselves further down the road towards our greater potential. I believe astrology provides a great tool for observing our progress and awakening our consciousness to becoming a whole, better, and more complete individuals. I have sought to invite the best contemporary guests, thought leaders, and progressive minds to discuss topics that concern us all, regardless of your beliefs. Consider making a contribution through PayPal to help keep the great wheel turning so that I can continue for the next 10 years along the same enlightened path. As always, I thank you for your support. Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. This is a show. We're talking today with Cal Garrison, and she's telling us about her new book, The Lunar Gospel, which I think to be a... We were just chatting about this offline a little bit ago, about the idea of the word gospel. And I think the gospel gives it a certain weight and a certain reverence. And I like that because the moon is incredibly important. It's our emotional basis. And so it's great that you called it that, Cal. I think it's great.
Well, when you think about the moon, too, think about it. I mean, the moon is the most cyclical body in the entire solar system.
It's true. It's very predictable. Yep.
Right? And it goes, and it's the one thing aside from the sun.
I know.
You know, we can sit and watch, and we can see it move.
It's our core. It's our core. I agree.
Okay, so you and tracing the movements of the moon makes it totally possible to be able to see what time and repetition are all about here, because time and experience and repetition are the only teachers on this planet.
I agree. That is why astrology works. I don't care. I just read an article today in magazine online about how bad astrology was, and it wasn't accurate, it was superstition. And I said, they know nothing about mathematics. They know nothing about cyclical nature. They know nothing about geometry. This is where it all comes down. This is the root of our intelligence and our whole solar system is geometry.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Hey, where were you this year? Did you see the totality of the sun this summer?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Did you see the lunar eclipse this past summer in August? August.
Well, I've seen a lot of eclipses this last year. Yes.
August. Okay, I saw totality. I experienced totality, so that's why I was wondering. It was fascinating. But anyway, so the book. I want to get back to the idea. So when we look at the individual signs through the moon, we see a distinct kind of character attribute crop up every time. So let's start. Let's just go through the routine. Give us Moon in Aries, just as for the first, just to give it.
All right. Okay. Moon in Aries is a first house thing.
Yep.
So you've got to think about that. But essentially, what the Moon in Aries implies is the body of wisdom that the person is bringing in from the previous experience is the archetype of the warrior spirit. All right, Mars rules Aries. Okay, so the individual with the Aries moon has had many, many, many lifetimes being on the front lines, and their virtue is their bravery and their courage and their forthrightness.
Yeah, honesty.
Okay, and that's the thing about Aries. You're always going to get the straight scoop from an Aries.
Yeah.
Okay, and somebody with an Aries moon, particularly. Okay, but that archetype is
there. It's no question about it. It's there. Yeah, it's totally there.
The weakness of the Aries archetype is narcissism.
Yep. There's a bit of that going on there. I wouldn't call it narcissism. I call it vanity.
Vanity is totally okay too.
Yeah,
you know what
I call it vanity. I think it's a sort of a self-appreciation, whatever you want to call it. I mean,
and there's something good about that.
No, it's very good. It's self-affirming. That's why they're able to keep going up and doing it again and again and again. All right, let's move on to Taurus. What about Taurus?
The Taurus moon archetype is about somebody who has sort of gathered the information that shows us exactly what it means to truly understand all of the things that make life worthwhile relative to the stuff that money can't buy.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so the Taurus moon has graduated from lifetimes of having all of the beautiful things of this earth, okay, and has developed an appreciation for those things that is over the top. Now, if it's afflicted, you're going to get a different story.
Of course, but we can't do that. Also very stubborn, I would say. They could be very stubborn. But anyway, let's move on to Gemini. What do we got for Gemini?
Geminis are lightweights.
Yeah, they are. They're emotionally.
Gemini moon is like they don't even know how to scratch the surface.
Well, it's a very superficial kind of front. It's a front, I think. It's sort of it's just a chatter that's going on in their heads all the time.
Yeah, they don't. The virtue of the Gemini moon is that nothing bothers them.
Well, unless they got at least they got a deep Scorpio sun in there somewhere or something.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, but they have that. But it's a very quick, emotionally, I think, very quick and emotional, able to balance many things at the same time, able to contain many emotions at the same time, multitaskers like you read about, right?
Oh yeah, they're scanners,
Yeah.
and they can do a lot of things, but they can't go. They don't. I've never been able to figure out if they don't comprehend the deeper mysteries or if they are just unable to go there. I've never been able to figure that out. There's also the whole concept.
So they're somewhat superficial.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
it's okay because they were only put here with the Gemini moon. They were just put here. They know how to collect information. They don't know how to process it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good observation. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Cancer moon we already talked about at the beginning. What about the Leo moon? Leo moon. I know a Leo moon person, and this person is over the moon. They walk into the room and they own that room, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Leo moon is they've already had the lifetime where they were Mae West.
Yeah, exactly. Mae West is a perfect example. Love that.
And they're vibrating at that frequency.
Yep, Mae West is it. All balls to the wall. Yeah, exactly.
Madonna,
Yeah.
Mick Jagger, they all have Leo moons. And it's interesting because they're very involved with the ego. Unlike the Aries, now, the Aries moon, Leo moon's kind of similar. The thing with the Aries moon is they can be happy all by themselves. The Leo moon person needs recognition. It needs attention. It needs all this feedback.
It demands it. Yep. Yeah, I get that.
They come into this life. It's unfortunate in a way because they come into this life expecting that level of recognition. They don't always get it.
I know. And it's funny because I think that they sort of have an expectation, which is odd, I thought. But that's just the way it is, That's how it goes.
No, it's totally true. And they have a lot of them have been royalty in previous lives.
I think that's anytime you have a Leo node or moon or sun sign, you've got some nobility there somewhere. It just seems to be there. It's always is. So we move on to Virgo. What do we get? I think we look at a very,
Virgo rising.
a soft touch. I have Virgo rising, yeah.
You have Virgo rising. Okay, so Virgo moon is somebody who essentially you're looking at the high priest or the high priestess. Okay, and they have already had the way that I just look at that right away is that this person has already been deeply exposed and involved with whatever their sacred work involves.
Yes. I think that's a good analogy. I think it has to do with service to others, helping others out of charity, kindness, and humility to an extent where they themselves are less important than those others. The others are more important than themselves. I think that's important. I like that. Yeah. Then we move on to, that's a good one. Then we move on to the Libra. Libra moon, there we go again, that deep air.
Libra moon drives me nuts. These are the people that really think that they came to Earth to mate and breed. And it's funny because nobody came here to do that.
Well, we all did in our own way.
Well, it's interesting because that's where everybody sort of gets stuck. Okay, because it's kind of like saying you came here to brush your teeth. All right, it's like
okay, I get that.
They have never been any. They have Libra moon people got their instinct shut down at a very early age, and they became extremely conventional. And there is this other piece with them, from my experience, that the soul has never had the opportunity to develop itself outside of the whole concept of being somebody who is a partner in a relationship. And depending on the ascending sign, they're either going to have to do that again.
Yeah.
And right. You know what would be easy to say about a Libra moon is that this is an individual who has had all of their best qualities trashed in relationships.
Yep. I can see also there's a very strong aesthetic quality. There's a very strong it's the same problem with Geminis and Aquarians. They have this sense of duality to them. They flip-flop sometimes, but they have very hard, not so much with the Libra, but more with the Aquarius. They have hard, fast ideas, but they're changeable, which is something I always think is interesting because in that way they're like the Geminis in a way. They have a certain changeability to them, and that always gets me. But anyway, that's what they are. We love you as you are. Don't worry, we're just chatting here.
You know what? I got to say something about that, okay? I don't, and I don't want to hold you up, but also the business with the Libra moon is that they like everything to be nicey nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, the hallmark, or one of the keys that I was given very early on with the Libra moon is it's the iron hand in the velvet glove. Okay, 'cause
That
so
makes sense. Yeah, I like that.
they come across like you say with all the beauty and the aesthetics and all of that nonsense, but they're hard as nails. Okay, and they can be total pricks. That's why they make the best generals.
Yep, yep, I can see that. Matter of fact, Vladimir Putin is a Libra. So interestingly enough, there you look. There's one right there. Scorpio. Scorpio moon is an intense moon. Man, oh Manischewitz. It's an intense moon, right?
Oh yeah, I spent my most recent relationship was with a guy who was like he had 50 planets and asteroids in Aries with a Scorpio moon. That guy almost killed me.
Right.
Okay. And it's interesting because they have this huge dark energy that they brought in from, you know what it is? It's lifetimes of being a sorcerer or a sorceress.
That's right, a witch or something like that. Yeah, in that business.
Yeah, and they're coming through with this whole idea of like an enormous amount of guilt about the fact that they have been completely immersed in those things. Lots of secrets.
Yeah, that's interesting, huh? Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Really kind of cool.
It can be good or it can be really, really destructive. It just depends.
Oh, they can be very, I mean, all the qualities of, I mean, the thing about, when you talk about the Scorpio moon, whenever you think of Scorpio, there's always this, as with any sign, there's pluses and minuses, assets and liabilities with all signs. What we find is that with the Scorpio, they seem to be amplified somehow.
They're lethal. They can be lethal.
That's what I mean. They're lethal. They're dangerous. Yeah, you got to stay away from them because they can be vengeful, but they can be very loyal and loving and fine people at the same time. So now we move on to Sagittarians. We got the wanderer here. We got the guy who likes to wander.
Yeah, Sag moon. I love Sagittarius. The whole deal with Sagittarius essentially means that they've spent lifetimes on the quest, lifetimes on the path to spirit and the search for truth.
Yep.
The energy is very much associated with the indigenous religious or spiritual teachings, so that you've got to think of Asia, you've got to think of Native American, you've got to think of Celtic or Norse energy vibrating, or even, out of the Mayan culture, but they have drawn a tremendous amount of spiritual wisdom from the indigenous people of the world, and they carry that wisdom with them. Depending on the rising sign will tell you whether or not it's going to go in a particular direction in this
right.
one.
Yeah, I totally get that. Interesting. It's an intense one. When we look at the Capricorn moon, I think more of a steadfast, sort of very dependable kind of emotional, a very stable emotional person, I think.
Yeah, no, totally. And my experience with that is that they have been the one who was the authority on the subject, had all of the respect, all of the stuff that everybody thinks we're supposed to be after, and that they have a huge amount of whatever that paternal energy is that knows more about everything than everybody else. And
very pragmatic, practical.
Yeah, one of my daughters has a Capricorn moon, and basically she took care of me.
Ah, wow, yeah, that's good.
And
I can see that.
She's in her 40s now, and she's this hot shot. She's the on-set scenic for all of the real famous movies that you see.
That's cool. That's great. Wow. Awesome. The next one we're talking about is Capricorn. The next one we have is Aquarius. Aquarius moon.
Aquarius is easy. Aquarius, basically you're talking to a person who has not spent a whole lot of time in this dimension. They are from a completely different galaxy. All right? And they have no idea what's going on down here, because the realm that they have come from is rarefied from a spiritual perspective to the point where it's very, very difficult for them to mesh with whatever the baseness of human nature is in the third dimension. And they also have two modes of expression. They're either going to turn into the Burning Man hippie, let's spark up a joint and break all the rules, or they're going to be the person who decides to be the president of the frigging student council.
Yep. That's the community organizer is where it's all at. They love that. So I think there's a certain, I would say, as a poli-sci graduate there somewhere. That's what it sounds like to me. Someone who wants to be out there, but I can see it going both ways. But they're very community-oriented. They like the bigger circle, and I love that quality about them. What about the, now we come to the final one, the Pisces one.
Pisces is the person who's been either spent lifetimes in a cave meditating in bodhisattva mode, or they've spent many, many lifetimes being victimized through the addictive syndrome or through the abuse syndrome. They have an intense amount of sensitivity. Many times you'll find them as people who are deeply artistic. And
they have a very strong aesthetic quality to them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they're really remarkable. So when we look at this, let's just, in summary, we're thinking about this from our astrological perspective here. We think of the moon, and I think it's important to pay attention to it. Obviously, I would lean on it very, very heavily for every person. I think it's a much stronger indicator of the personality of the person than the personality. And I say it that way because I think it's an important distinction. I think the personality is one thing. The personality is what they project out to the world, but the person is what they are by themselves. So the moon, I think, represents that basic inner window of the actual person where you see the real true heart of them. And it fits for you, or it doesn't fit for you, but it's a good thing to know if you're trying to find somebody out there.
Yeah, in a way, it's like the inner child.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's totally that. So, anyway, we've been talking today with Cal Garrison. She's the author of the Lunar Gospel, a new book that's out now. I encourage you to go look at it. You can find it on all the old places you find books. Cal Garrison is her name. Her website is Cal Garrison, C-A-L, 1L, Garrison, 2Rs.com. And check her out. She has a good book. She's got a great attitude. She understands her astrology, and she loves it, as we all do. Cal, anything to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm just glad that we had a chance to talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been good. You know, we had a bit of a misrupt at the beginning there, but we managed to overcome it, and we're back on the air without a problem at all, and it's good to go. Again, calgarrison.com. Cal Garrison is the author of the Lunar Gospel. And I encourage you to go get it. It's a great book. It's a fun read. Very easy, very accessible, not difficult to digest. You'll understand it very quickly. It may change your life. So there you go. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're off the hook.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.